Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Derek Miller. I'm the president of the Salt Lake Chamber and also serve as the chair of the Utah Economic Response Task Force. And this is our weekly task force town hall. Today, we're going to be focusing on an expansion of the Paycheck Protection Program. Of course, we'll also hear from some businesses who are doing exactly the mantra that the task force adopted over a month ago, which is to adapt, to innovate, and to overcome. But because this is the governor's task force, we want to start with him for a welcome and any words of wisdom you have for us, Governor.
Well, thank you. As always, we appreciate the work of so many people, and particularly the members of this task force, which are helping us to have a good response to the pandemic and help us get back economically to where we were before. That's our goal, to be just as strong, be number one in the nation. And frankly, I think we can do that. And we certainly will do it quicker and faster than any other state in America. So thanks to the work of everybody. I actually want to not only tell you thanks, but two kind of recent developments of today, at least we've announced today, which you ought to be aware of. One, as you know, testing has been a big deal. And the country and the states have been very much behind the curve, not anticipating this need to have testing of a virus. And so we've been trying to do more and more testing, and we've had some great success because of people pulling together. You've all heard about Silicon Slopes and the testutah.com, which has helped us to get more testing out there. We're in the top 5 when it comes to per capita testing. But one of the bottlenecks we've had is a lack of swabs. It seems kind of silly that you would think swabs would be a problem, but there's not enough swabs around. And so we put out a request to people in the private sector: if you have the ability to provide swabs to us, help us out. And we had a response from a friend of all of ours here, Fred Lampropoulos with Merit Medical, who we work with our Office of Economic Development, GOED, and particularly Ben Hart and the Lieutenant Governor, in trying to come together with a way that maybe he could realign his manufacturing plant and develop swabs. And really that started literally 3 weeks ago. And Fred got a hold of it and he said, hey, I think we can do this. They really work 24/7 around the clock and have a new kind of a swab, which we think is probably much more adaptable to the testing needs that we have. It's not only a swab, it has to have flexibility, it has to have fibers on the end to collect the samples from the people, the specimen. Then it has to break off at a certain point as you put it into a vial. And then you have to have a reagent to transport the sample to the lab. And to make a long story short, he's going to be manufacturing all those things right here in good old Utah. We have on order 400,000 of them, test kits right now. And he's starting today, he's starting to produce them today. And so we had an announcement of this new opportunity for us to fill the needs in testing by a homegrown company, Merit Medical. And we appreciate that announcement today. And what that means is we're going to become self-sufficient, at least on that part of the test here in Utah. In fact, it'll go beyond that. I'm already getting calls from other states and other governors, and so is Fred, to see if they can supply their needs first. But we're at the front of the line. It'll be Utah first and the rest of the country second. So that was a major announcement today. That's a breakthrough on our supply chain. And second announcement I made today is that, as most of you know, we've had hospitals and medical people of their own accord say we're going to forego elective surgeries, being concerned that if we had a surge in those who are infected by the coronavirus, COVID-19, that we might have an overwhelming of our bed space, particularly our ICU bed space, and medical supplies, medicines, serums, vaccines, etc., that they use for surgery, and medical equipment like masks and gowns, etc. So they, of their own accord, then on March the 3rd, we actually put out through the state health department an order, I said March 3rd, it's March 30th, to put out an order to say that was now official dictates by the state health department. And that's been in place. And now we've got this taken care of with, at least we've had the numbers improved. I don't know if you saw the testing numbers today. We had over 4,000. In fact, it was 4,047. Our rates of infection are down. All the numbers are looking good. They're trending in the right direction, which is really cause for celebration, at least cautious optimism. And with that, now we are able to work with our task force and with also the legislature's task force they put in place. They're in concert on this, saying we recommend, in fact, to at least in a incremental manner, open up elective surgery. Those elective surgeries will be those who are same day. They won't have to stay overnight. That's the first step in this process, and we'll be doing it with the support of the hospital association, the healthcare providers. All of them are on board with this, and so starting tomorrow, effectively, we will in fact open up elective surgeries on a limited basis as we grow. Now, if we end up finding there's a surge in COVID-19 infections, we may have to readdress that. But right now, again, we're cautiously optimistic. We're at the right point to be able to do this. We'll continue to monitor that. And if we continue to have trending in the direction we're going, which is improvement, then we'll start to open up even more elective surgery opportunities, as well as other parts of the economy, which you all know about. So today was a red letter day on two fronts, new products being provided by a local manufacturer and opening up hospital and health cares for, and including dental surgery too, or dental elective operations for elective surgery going forward. So good news for all of us. That means we're on the rebound, and I hope we continue in the same vein. Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you, Governor. That is good news, and thank you for sharing it with us. Maybe I follow up and ask you a question about potentially more good news coming our way. I know that you and your office are looking closely at when and how the state may move from a high-risk red level to a moderate risk orange level. I'm not going to ask you when that's going to happen, but I do want to ask you this question. Just about an hour ago, I received an email from a very large retail operation in our state in Salt Lake City that had to close. And the email came from the general manager, and the email basically said, Derek, in your work with the governor, will it be possible to get as much advance notice as possible? We know that these decisions are being looked at and the data is coming in, but these are complex organizations, they're complex operations. Will we be able to know, not with certainty, but at least with a target, when we may be able to open again? Have you given any thought to that and how we could give as much advance notice as possible to these operations that would like to start again, but they'd also like to start planning so that they can be safe?
Well, I think about it every day, Derek. It's a constant review of the data to see when and if we can do this. And it really is not a matter of if, it is a matter of when. We think that as we get by the end of this month, April 30th, May 1st, we're going to be in a much better position to start incrementally opening up the economy. Now, we've never shut everything down. We're not like most states anyway. And we've had regional differences and regional approaches. Some has been more strict than what I've done as a statewide directive. But I think that we will do is, obviously, we want to give as much notice as we possibly can, but I don't want to say we're going to be open on May 5th and then we don't do it. So I'm a little cautious about that. I don't want to have some kind of whiplash. You told me it was going to open, now you're pulling it back. So I'll know probably better at the end of this week. If the trend continues that we had today, I mean, the numbers today were fantastic. If that continues through the end of this week, we will be able to start opening things up by the 1st of May. I'm talking about May 1.
Yeah.
And so stay tuned. Let's see what happens through this week. And maybe next Monday we'll have some really exciting opportunities to forecast maybe the opening up of the economy the next week.
Thank you, Governor. Before we go to Senator Romney and Congressman McAdams to talk about what's happening in Washington, D.C., specifically with regards to the Paycheck Protection Program, I want to highlight a subject that you talked about, and that is the testing. And the reason I want to do this is because we all, I think, understand why testing will be critical in order for us to reactivate elements of our economy. But I'm finding more and more, Governor, as I talk with business leaders and community leaders, and even just my neighbors and family members, that often I'm finding there's some confusion around testing. And the confusion I have come to the conclusion usually comes from a misunderstanding between what I would call an assessment, a screening, and then actually being tested for the COVID-19 virus. And I think sometimes we talk about the broad umbrella of testing as if it's those three things. And so I wanted to just take a moment to make sure that people understand the difference. When you and when others encourage people to go to testutah.com, they will not receive there a test for the COVID-19 virus. Rather, what they receive and what they do is a self-assessment about whether or not they should receive the medical test for the COVID-19 virus. So there's the assessment, which we want all Utahns to take. And then there's what I call screening, which is going to be critically important when we begin to reopen segments of our economy. And when I use the term screening, I'm talking about, a self-screening. Do you have any symptoms? If so, you should not go to work. We also would talk about what some businesses are already doing in taking the temperature of their employees before they're allowed to come into work. And so that's an employer screening. And then, of course, the third level is the test, that is the medical test that you were talking about earlier. And I think it's important that we remember that there are those three distinct elements. Anything about that, Governor, you'd like to share?
No, I think you're right, Derek, that people are confused. And because they're confused, there's less action than otherwise there would be. Everybody should, in fact, do a self-analysis, and with the test utah.com allows you to go through an assessment to see if you should go in and have somebody give you a test. We have like 45 now, maybe 48 different testing locations around the state of Utah. And there's one close by. It's not too far away. Some parts of rural Utah, it's a little more of a distance. But I called up the other day just to do one. Somebody complained about it, took too long. And they said, you call them up, but don't tell them you're the governor. And so I did. I called him up and said, I'm calling for a friend. And went through the process and said, my friend has got some symptoms and he's concerned. He thinks he needs to have a test. What are the symptoms? Well, he's got a temperature of 101 and he's having a cough and he doesn't want, he's got the cold. He wants to get it tested. And they said to me, well, have him come down. We're open till 6. Take him about 5 minutes to fill out a questionnaire and we'll give him a test. Then it goes to the lab after that, and it takes 24 to 48 hours in most instances. So depending on where you're at, maybe some are more busy than others, but people are confused. And we've been frustrated because I've had people go to a testing site in Lehigh, and they've said, you don't have enough symptoms. We're not going to test you. And that's not the message. So I think the information is not getting all the way to the end of the row, because we want to test anybody who's got symptoms at all. It doesn't have to be severe anymore. If you've got a symptom, we hope to move with additional capacity now to those who just want to do it. If you're curious, you'll have a chance to go in and be tested, whether you have symptoms or not. The screening part, we're asking everybody to participate in screening. When I went to Merit Medical today, for example, they have a medical provider that they have full-time on staff. But when you walk in the door, you have to answer questions. Do you have any symptoms? And they give you a thermometer test across your forehead. And if you pass, they give you a little tag to put on your uniform or your coat or whatever to say you have passed the screening and you're allowed to be inside the building now. If not, they'll send you home. And they do that for all their employees and for all their customers, and in my case, for all their visitors today. That we're going to need to do more of that if we're going to get through this screening and opening up the economy and protecting and minimizing the risk that's out there in the marketplace. So I think we're going to all see more of that as we open up the economy. By the way, and wearing masks. We need to have more people wear masks when they're out and about. Go grocery shopping, you should be wearing a mask. Go to retail outlet, you should be wearing a mask.
Thank you, Governor. We've been talking about the Paycheck Protection Program and federal relief programs for a long time. Most recently, we heard that the program was very close to running out of money, or maybe had run out of money. In some ways, it's hard to fathom $350 billion going that quickly. But I think what it tells us is just how great the need was and the great need that continues. So we're grateful on our town hall today to be joined by Senator Mitt Romney, and also from the U.S. House of Representatives, Congressman Ben McAdams. I think they've got some good news for us. So Senator Romney, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you so much, Derek. Appreciate the chance to be with you, and to all of your members. Let me tell you, I've never seen anything quite as difficult as this that you guys are working through. History will record what you've been doing, and you'll be telling your kids and grandkids about these times. So more courage and power to you through this. There is good news today, which is the Senate did pass the latest version of a rescue package. And I note it's not a stimulus because there's no economy to stimulate really right now. It's a rescue package, a relief package to help America's small businesses and the employees of small businesses. And so $310 billion more was added to the PPP program. And that basically doubles the amount of funding that goes into that program. About 90 of that total is going to smaller banks, smaller credit unions, smaller institutions, because there's a feeling that some of these smaller institutions were not able to get the money out as quickly as the larger, more automated institutions. So some of this is earmarked to smaller banks. And so I'd note that if you've not gotten a PPP loan approved, go to multiple institutions, put in your application, and get some of that money so that you're able to keep employees on your payroll. And as you know, these PPP loans will be forgiven if you maintain your employment level. There was also $50 billion in the bill that was devoted to what's known as the EIDL loans, EIDL, Emergency Injury Disaster Loans, EIDL loans. These loans you apply for not from your local bank, but instead from the SBA. And these loans, there are two parts. One is they'll give you an immediate amount of money just for applying. You'll get $10,000 just for applying. And that first $10,000 you get does not have to be repaid. If you get more money and are approved in the EIDL program, then that money will have to be repaid. It's a standard loan. It has an interest rate of 3.75%. So whether you're going for a PPP program or an EIDL loan, or in my opinion, going for both, makes a lot of sense. So EIDL, you go straight to the SBA website. For the PPP program, you go to as many banks as you can. I'd go to any bank where you already have a banking relationship. We've already put out $3.6 billion in PPP loans in Utah, which is a little more than the national average on a per capita basis. So we're making good progress there. And some of the lenders have done a really terrific job getting money out. There was also $75 billion rather that was devoted or will be devoted to hospitals, helping our hospitals that are really experiencing a lot of extra cost and lost revenue because they're not doing, as the governor just indicated, the elective surgeries that they normally do. There's also $25 billion that's been appropriated for pursuing more testing, more technology associated with testing so that we can try and ramp that up. So that was version, if you will, 3.5 of the rescue effort. There will probably be a version 4.0 coming along. And version 4.0 will certainly include a portion of funding to go to states and localities because they're seeing less revenue and more cost. And we've already appropriated some money there before, but more now is being added. I'm not quite sure what'll happen in this round 4.0, but more will be added, I'm convinced. One question is, will it be able to fill the reduction in revenue? I think that's probably going to happen, but there are people on both sides of that issue, but more money to states and localities. And then I think there's probably going to be a version 5.0, a true stimulus. My expectation is that this economy is not going to spring back to its full, robust nature that we're used to, but instead it's going to take a while for it to completely recover. And to encourage that process along, my guess is that there will be a true stimulus type of proposal. I don't know what that's going to look like, but those things are coming along. And finally, I just note right now the issue that the governor's facing and governors across the country are facing is, what do you reopen and when? And your input on that as small business people and mid-sized business people will be valuable, because people are going to want to know what kind of retail can be done safely with social distancing, what can be done in agriculture safely, what across the economy. They're going to want to be able to pinpoint the kinds of institutions that they can begin operating again safely. And your suggestions on that will be, I'm sure, heavily weighted by the governor and lieutenant governor and others on this task force. So make sure that your voice is being heard, and safety, of course, is the #1 priority here. So with that, Derek, let me turn to Ben and see. We did our job in the Senate, Congressman. Are you guys ready to pass this in the House?
Well, thank you, Senator. Thank you for getting that across the finish line. And I am looking forward. I'm hopping on a plane tomorrow to go back and get this done. And, we have been hearing from so many businesses that are just caught in the limbo of their applications their application's been approved, and waiting to know if the funding's going to be there. And they're trying to hold on to employees. And so, I was really happy to see, first of all, the Utah delegation joined together unanimously in calling for this funding to get reauthorized. And we all were caught in the frustration of Washington politics and the jockeying, and really happy now to see a deal through the Senate. And it sounds like, I was on a call with some of my colleagues earlier today, sounds like there's a unanimous, well, certainly not unanimous, but a consensus that we will move forward and we will get this done. And so right now the fear is that it'll run out again, that the demand will be so high as we're waiting for these businesses to come back that there will be another shortfall. So that may fall into 4.0 or 4.5 or wherever we are. But, there's some good news that we were happy to hear from the state of Utah and Governor. I don't know if the governor's still on, but commend you for the great work that you've done, expanding testing, working with our incredible private sector here, that, testing is at the foundation of reopening the economy. But we were happy to hear from the Utah Department of Workforce Services that of the incredible numbers of individuals unemployed, the historic numbers that are so shocking, maybe a silver lining to that dark cloud is that 70% of Utahns who are receiving unemployment are what's called job attached. So that means they're furloughed with the intent of employers to bring them back when the stay-at-home order ends. So that's a positive sign that maybe the recovery in Utah, that there's still some fertile soil to see those sprouts come up when we're ready to start reopening, that the employers are there and they're eager to bring those employees back on. So, we know how much these programs are important in keeping the floor in our economy strong, so that we're able to dial it up when we're ready to move forward. So thank you to the Salt Lake Chamber and many of our local chambers for your advocacy and helping I understand how important it is, because we're hearing from so many of our businesses, but it was so important for me to have those local stories to go back and to tell leadership in the House and to tell my colleagues how important it is to get this done. So thank you, Senator Romney, for clearing the way, and we hope to follow suit. I think the vote's scheduled for Thursday morning in the House.
Excellent. Well done. Thank you.
Thanks to both of you, and thanks for responding so quickly to the needs of the business community. And we say business community, but it's important that we remember who we're really talking about are people. They're the people who own those businesses. They're the people who work for those businesses. And I love the fact that the Paycheck Protection Program was specifically designed to keep people employed. And we sent a letter to our congressional delegation from the Salt Lake Chamber advocating for the expansion of the PPP loan program. Hundreds of Utah businesses signed on to that letter. So we're grateful for that. I do have a question for each one of you. And Senator Romney, maybe we'll come to you first. You've been in business your whole life. You understand how it works. You understand when it doesn't work, which is equally important, and how to fix things. You've also been the governor of a state, and so you understand how the government works. I'd love to have you share your insights with those participating today on what you would share with regards to reactivating elements of our economy. You already mentioned about listening to the input of the business community, and I thank you for that. I'm sure you and our other listeners already know that the Utah Leads Together plan was really a grassroots plan. There were over 80 different business associations that were consulted as details were put together on how they could respond to moving from a red high risk level to an orange moderate risk level. Other insights that you may have as a former businessman, as a former governor, and as a current U.S. Senator?
Well, I would be thinking about how my business is going to change as a result of what we've gone through. So in addition to just saying, how can I survive? And that would be obviously priority number one, which is, okay, who am I going to pay? Who am I not going to pay? Which bills am I going to put off? Who am I going to ask for more credit from, better terms from? Who am I going to give better terms to? Who am I going to extend credit to? Because this is the time to build better customer relations. So that's going to be going on. But then I'd think about, all right, how's my business going to change going forward? What things do I need to adjust as a result of what's happened here? Because you're going to see, I think, a surge in online ordering, a surge in people buying their groceries, for instance, from home and expecting delivery. There are a lot of us that didn't know how to do that. We've now learned. So your business is going to change, and you're going to want to take advantage of those new circumstances. And I think it's important that you communicate to the chamber as well as to government officials that represent you, how it is you can keep people safe and begin to operate your business again. Because they're going to have an old model in mind, and you're going to be able to tell them you've got a new model in mind that will allow people to interact with your business on a safe basis. So were I a governor, I would be looking at differences in communities to see what the level is of coronavirus infection rate. But then I'd also look to see different types of businesses where I would expect that social distancing would be possible. So construction, for instance, in many cases, I would think would be able to start up again. I might also anticipate that certain retail places like Lowe's and Home Depot and hardware stores, you don't have to be real close to people to be able to shop in those locations. Certainly not any closer than you are in a grocery store. And so I'd be looking industry by industry. Agriculture, for instance, is another place where I would expect that ag could get up and going. And whether this is a farm or ranch itself, or whether it's those institutions that serve ranchers and farmers, I would expect they ought to be able to get up and going faster than perhaps bars and restaurants. So being able to distinguish between those that can operate in a safe way, even as the coronavirus is still around, and communicating that to your elected officials, I think would be most helpful. That's what I'd be looking for.
Excellent advice. Thank you, Senator. And it's interesting to me how I've met with and spoken to many different businesses, not just on these town halls, but in person and over the phone. They echo that comment about how it's causing them to really quickly implement some things that they talked about for a long time. But necessity being the mother of invention, in order to survive and to see their ability to thrive into the future, has really caused them to start to not just change what they're doing for now, but what they'll be doing for a model to come. So thank you for that answer. Congressman McAdams, the question for you is, I read in today's paper that you've joined a newly formed bipartisan caucus in Congress, and I'd love for you to tell us about that.
Yes, I'm a member of the Problem Solvers Caucus, and in order to join, it's in the House, and in order to join the Problem Solvers, you have to join 2 by 2, Republican and Democrat, and we work to try and break the logjam on a lot of important pieces of legislation, what we can do to move forward. Whether it's right now in the pandemic, we've been talking about the PPP program. We actually had Senator Romney present to the Problem Solvers before the world got turned upside down on fiscal responsibility and the legislation that he's introduced, that I'm co-sponsoring a version in the House to talk about fiscal responsibility. And I hope that the days will come that we're going to have to come back to that and talk about that legislation and how we pay our debts. And I think right now, today, and the crisis we're going through right now shows how unprepared we were financially for this crisis, and the day of reckoning is going to come. So the Problem Solvers is an organization I belong to. We put forward yesterday a plan to at the federal level what needs to happen to reopen the economy, and it's no surprise. I think it actually amplifies a lot of what Utah's doing. Testing is fundamental. We've got to have access to testing for those who show symptoms. Also, expansion of the antibody testing, and ARUP, another Utah company, is leading the way on that, and will deploy, I think I heard starting on Friday, antibody testing for those who may have had it, with so many cases that have been asymptomatic, moving forward testing. But we also echo that reopening the economy has to be done responsibly, that we can't do it without a plan and without following the data. The last thing we want is to find ourselves in a situation where the economy is reopened and the virus resurges and we have to shut down again. So, I would commend the state of Utah also for doing it in conjunction with data and following the data, that we open up in a streamlined and thoughtful way that can help us make sure that it is a permanent recovery from the pandemic and also economic recovery.
Thank you for that, Congressman McAdams. And speaking of recovery, you are one of the handful of people in the world who is a COVID-19 survivor. We're grateful for that. I know you are, and so is your family. But we'd love for you to take just a minute or two and tell us about that experience as well as you can.
Yeah, so it hit me really hard, as many as you know, and I would just use that as an opportunity to say, we all hear the statistics that if you're over the age 60, if you have co-occurring health conditions, you're in a high-risk category. But for me, it came. The symptoms started pretty mild. I had some aches and a temperature of about 100, nothing alarming, and just thought, it must be a cold. Of course, I was following the CDC guidelines, so I was already at home and isolated when I developed symptoms, but it hit me pretty mildly initially, and I just thought I could sleep it off. And after a few days, it entered another phase. I felt it move into my lungs. My lungs really felt constricted. It was hard to breathe. After about a week of symptoms, it got to the point that I stood up on about a week into it. I stood up and walked across my bedroom and couldn't make it across the bedroom without stopping and having to lean on the dresser and catch my breath, and just felt like I'd run a 5K. And at that point, they checked me into the hospital. I spent 8 days here at the UMed Center, really having a tough time breathing, no energy. I was on oxygen. So you have your oxygen, your blood oxygenation is usually, ideally 100%. And anywhere from mid 90s to 100 is good. Low 90s is a little troubling. Mine was in the mid 80s. And so they immediately checked me into the hospital, put me on supplemental oxygen. Fortunately, I never needed to use a respirator, but it was a pretty rough week. And then after about 16 days of symptoms, I recovered and doing much better today. I've actually volunteered for a clinical trial that's looking at the development of antibodies, and then if the use of plasma, antibodies in plasma, how effective are they in treating an illness like this? And so happy to continue to contribute whatever my body developed and however my body overcame it to try and help us understand what this sickness is and what the best therapies are to treat it.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us, and we are grateful that you were able to overcome it. And of course, our thoughts and prayers are with those who are struggling with it currently. Thank you for joining us, Congressman McAdams. Thank you for joining us, Senator Romney. And now we'd like to turn some time to Amanda Covington, who is the Chief Communications Officer for the Larry H. Miller Group of Companies, who's going to tell us about how her company is implementing the Utah Leads Together 2.0 plan. Thanks, Amanda.
Great. Thank you, Derek. I just want to make sure you can hear me with a thumbs up there.
I can hear you.
Great. I just want to also thank our congressional delegation, and especially Senator Romney and Congressman McAdams, for all your work that you're doing. It's really critical for all of us, and we appreciate that dedication. And Derek, your leadership at the Chamber and the governor with the Economic Recovery Task Force. We've appreciated being part of that and learning from everyone who has been involved. We know that it's a data-driven approach, which we're very appreciative of, and that it's a flexible living plan. So as we continue to learn, we evolve and we innovate. And we also appreciate all of the subject matter experts and other industry task forces and groups that are joining to provide their best thoughts and lessons learned. Collectively, we're all doing better because we're learning from one another. And so we appreciate that. I was asked by Derek to share a little bit about what the Larry H. Miller Group of Companies is doing. And for those of you who don't know, we have a pretty diverse portfolio that touches different markets, which have all been pretty impacted by this pandemic, as most of you have been. So we have areas of our business that deal specifically in automotive dealerships, as well as insurance and finance. But we also have a sports and entertainment group that includes our Megaplex movie theaters and professional sports teams, and the Vivint Smart Home Arena, which has been severely impacted with the cancellation of contracts and games and other events. So I would like to take you through some of that today. We're using the plan as it's designed. We appreciate the 3 phases, both through the urgent recovery or stabilization and recovery, but also this next piece that has these risk areas and factors, and the addendum that was published that has specific recommendations for industry. And we're putting all of that to good use. I'll start with our automotive group. We were fortunate that the Department of Homeland Security's CISA guidelines included automotive parts, service, and sales as essential services to ensure that the frontline workers and those of you who need to get to the grocery store or to an emergency doctor appointment have reliable and safe transportation. And so on that vein, we've innovated, as we just heard was discussed on the call, to be able to adapt. The first thing we did, and this was prior to stay-at-home directives being given and some of the other industries that we participate in, particularly the MBA, coming to a complete standstill, we began to implement those CDC recommendations and guidelines in terms of sanitization and cleanliness and social distancing. Those have worked very well for our retail stores and automotive, where people do need to come in to get their cars serviced or whatnot. We're being very careful there. But we also became very innovative to say, well, maybe we have at-risk populations or others who just don't feel comfortable coming into a retail environment. And so we're offering a complimentary concierge service. So if you need your car or truck worked on, you can actually book an appointment and we'll come and pick up your automobile, service it, sanitize it, and then bring it back to you. We also became very creative with at-home test drives, so we can bring a car or truck to your home, and then you can converse over Facebook or chat with a salesperson on the features of the vehicle. And also online transactions, we can do a lot of that purchase online and then deliver that vehicle to your actual driveway. And so we're appreciative of the ability to be able to work within guidelines and recommendations and be included as an essential business during this time. It's not the same in some of our other areas of business. I'll touch next on the Megaplex Theatres. So the day of the earthquake here in Utah, we were actually all convening in the office to get ready to put out that press release that the theaters would be closed. As we were pulling in to put that out, the earth began to shake. And so it's a very memorable day for a lot of us. We're referring to this session with our theaters as intermission. So we're trying to keep our patrons and those who are excited about the movies and find it as a fun family and individual event to stay entertained. There's a lot going on social media to keep people engaged. But we heard a lot from our patrons and our customers who love movie theater popcorn and concessions and what could we do to help them out. And so digitally, we went cashless and are now selling popcorn and concessions both for a curbside pickup, but also home delivery to people who really want to make the most of that movie night at home. We're also doing some volunteer work in delivering those concessions and popcorn to our healthcare workers, which makes it a little bit more fun. While we're in intermission, we're planning a lot of innovations along the way to make sure that that movie-going experience, when people are able to gather again in our theaters, is safe and enjoyable. A lot of this for our industry will depend on the studios and when they choose to release those blockbuster hits and new releases. And so while we're very anxious to hear what our state and municipalities recommend for us here on the local level, a lot will be dependent on what the major studios are saying as well and what we're actually able to show. We're also taking this time to put in new ways to have an environmentally safe plan. So when people come back, they feel very comfortable being in the theater. So in the industry, it's, we have a capability to block seats, and we're fortunate that we've now gone to digital purchases so that we can create seating maps. And along with the guidelines that have been given, if you look at the guidelines that the governor put out, it talks about a 10-foot distance maintained between household groups. For us, that will be very easy because we'll be able to block out seats around those purchases, making it beneficial for everyone. And we're also able to provide certain showtimes for at-risk populations or earlier entry times, as well as entrances. And then currently we're in the same boat as many of you, I'm sure, in terms of personal protective equipment. And, instead of 3D goggles that you hand people coming into theaters, everyone given a mask or those types of things. And so we're working with all of you and the state and our health officials to figure out what the best processes are to keep people safe as they come into our theaters. In the arena and sports area, that is probably one of the more complicated, and I think it has the longer lead time, just given the high number of people who gather together. And I want to give a nod to JC Skinner and the industry group that she leads as a result of this task force. A subset of us have pulled out of that group, and we had our first meeting today, which revolved around live events and entertainment. And I appreciate the breadth of the group. It's including people on a city and a county level. So think about people who are maybe planning on rodeos or a strawberry days or those types of events. And then things like weddings and community gatherings, as all the way up to a big concert, or it's a big sporting event like the Utah Jazz. And so it was really fun to see the Maverick Center there, we're there, the Sports Commission, and then numerous groups who put on events in their state. And the goal there will be to work on recommendations that we can all collectively agree are implementable, and share those with Derek's, you and the task force, as well as the governor's office, to help us do the very best to keep people safe, but also to resume some sort of ability to gather at some point. We at Larry H. Miller are really dependent on concert promoters like Live Nation and leagues like the MILB for the Bees and the NBA for the Utah Jazz. And right now we just don't have any dates. I wish I could come on this call today and say the next Jazz game will be played on X date, but we just don't have that information. In the interim, we're innovating there too. And I will give a nod to our Utah Jazz leadership team and the Vivint Arena. Just last fall, we started going cashless at the arena. And at that time, it felt very big in what we were trying to do. And now we're very grateful that we did what we did. And the Bees will be able to go cashless, as will the movie theaters, so that we can have that touch-free interaction in terms of purchases. And so that's going to be very helpful for us. And we're working on the same type of blocking seats and entrances and sanitization. And I think, like all of us, and this was a topic earlier in the call, that the other part is that testing of employees, performers, or participants in events, as well as how do we do that with those who come into our doors. Finally, we appreciate the plan, and the second value for us. I'll give a nod here to our CEO, Steve Starks. He's very wise and bright and collaborative, and he brought the 2.0 plan, actually when it was version 1.0, back to our teams and said, let's take these 3 phases and apply them to our business. So where are we in the urgent phase at Larry H. Miller Group? What does the stabilization phase look like for us? And when and what is that recovery phase? And so we've layered that Utah Leads Together plan on top of our business and strategic planning. And so we're using it both operationally and tactically, especially in this urgent phase, but we're using it much more strategically for that longer view. And so we appreciate the tools that you, Derek, and the team have really put together for us, and the great work of Kristen Cox and Natalie Gochner. And it's helping us to be innovative. And then we're really using our employees' time right now. We have a lot of people either working from home or finding other projects to work on to collectively innovate and come up with new solutions, so that when we do come back and whatever that new look is, that we do it better and that we're stronger, and that we can share lessons learned and best practices with all of you, and we can collectively rise together as a community.
Amanda, thank you for that great information. I want to go back to something that the governor said, that we know it's a matter of when, not if, and just say that we all look forward to the day when we'll be rooting for the Jazz together again.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We have a member of our Economic Response Task Force that I want to introduce you all to, and that's Silvia Castro. Silvia runs the Suazo Business Center and helps the task force with minority outreach, specifically to the Hispanic community. And so I'd like for Silvia to take just a few minutes to talk about the work of the Suazo Business Center generally, but then of course specifically what the center is doing to help Hispanic businesses at this challenging time. Silvia, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Derek. So the Suazo Business Center has been in the community since 2002. We are a nonprofit that is a business resource center with the whole focus on economic empowerment for the Hispanic, Latino, and also other underserved communities. So some of the challenges have been, first of all, besides dealing with a virus, we also had to deal with an earthquake. So there's a little bit of, we had to quickly switch over to a digital platform. So we had to ensure that we were continuing to serve the community, and we were able to pivot fairly rapidly to be able to provide our trainings online and also our advising online. So some of the challenges that we've been helping the business community with in the Latino community has been, first of all, there was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of resources coming out fairly quickly, the PPP, the EIDL, the state loans, city loans, and from other cities. But some of the federal resources, there was a lot of change in terms of trying to figure out what requirements were asked in terms of what bank were asking for what. One bank would require one document versus another. And we were trying to basically, first of all, help people navigate to understand what they needed to do to get ready. One of the biggest challenge is that the first round of funding went towards people that already had an accountant, had lawyers, and had a W-2 payroll. So all that funding went. Also, the SBA was still doing a bit of modifications to the program on Monday. And by Thursday, the funding was gone. It just went by so quickly that it kind of took us all by surprise. We are working for the next run for the PPP. We're working with the Utah Bankers Association right now to actually ensure that we are partnering with them, ensuring to know ahead of time what are the different financial institutions here locally doing, so we can help people navigate that on this next round. The other challenge basically has been some of our clients have been unable to apply. They don't qualify or they won't apply for any kind of federal funding. One of the very things that a lot of people don't understand and don't know is that in terms of gaining legal status, you cannot have any kind of help that which is considered as a public charge. So if you're to take unemployment, if you're to take any of those help, any of those resources, any of that assistance, it might be considered public charge, completely destroying any chance of legality. So a little bit is a bit of kind of figuring out which one do you go with. Do you go for a long-term, providing for your family, or do you take basically the short-term cure? And that's a bit challenging. What we've been doing is basically taking a three-pronged approach with all of our clients. The first one is what I mentioned, helping them navigate any resources. Do they qualify? If they do, what do they need to do? The second is training them on how to get on digital platforms. This is not going away. So let's get you into digital platform to ensure that if your business can still operate, that you're able to. The next one is pivoting their businesses. Ideally, we would all love for all this to be a switch that we just flip on and, and we're back to what it was like in February. It's not going to be that way. And we want to ensure that they actually understand that things have changed and they will change for good. We have all been exposed to the digital world, working from home, ordering online. I don't see that going away. But it also presents perhaps a new challenge and a new opportunity for them to figure it out for more sustainable ways to continue to operate after this. I think one of the biggest challenge for us has been the good thing is that we are digital. We're able to help a lot of people. It's just getting the word out that we're here as a resource. It's nice that we're digital in that we're able to help anyone from St. George to Logan, and we're here, we're fully bilingual, and we're able to help people navigate all of this. The other challenge is just ensuring that we understand the process. It's nice that we're going in the second round with a lot more resources that we did last time. And I think a big part of what we're doing is basically catching everybody up to where the majority of the people are.
Silvia, thank you for sharing that important information. Let me ask you to share one more important piece of information, and that is, where can people find or how can they access the Suazo Business Center? Thank
you, Derek. So first of all, there will be an information on your website about a little bit about us and also how to reach us. One of the ways for them to reach us is via phone, 801-521-1709. We also have Facebook pages. We actually have one dedicated in Spanish and also one dedicated in English. We are trying to find as many resources, not just in terms of lending resources, but there's also some private organizations that are providing grants. So any opportunity that we can find, we're putting both in English and Spanish. As we understand that all of the business owners are kind of looking for this type of information. So we have both a Facebook page, Suazo Business Center English, and a Facebook page in English, which is just Suazo Business Center. We're very available through there. You can ask questions through Messenger or reach us via the phone. We also can reach us via email at frontdesk@suazocenter.org.
Excellent. Thank you for everything that you're doing for this important population. And for the rest of our town hall today, I want to turn the time to my colleague at the Utah Valley Chamber, Rona Rahlf, and one of her members to share a story of how businesses are adapting, innovating, and overcoming. Rona, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Derek, for inviting us and allowing us to participate. This is terrific. I have the opportunity to share with you, with the group, about RBM Building Services. RBM Building Services is the largest solely owned janitorial company in Utah, and they employ over 2,500 employees, and they clean over 30 million square feet of space every year. So
per night.
Per night.
Every night.
Oh, we got to fix that on your thingy.
Oh yeah.
Per night. I mean, okay, so just that alone is pressure, and then you put COVID on top of it and preparing for it. So and preparing, not just cleaning it, but preparing it for employees and eventually customers to return. In talking with Janae, they saw that the COVID tsunami was coming early and took measures very early to prepare and did some cutting edge work. And so I was excited to be able to bring her on to share that information and experience with them from that point of view of cleaning the buildings. And before I turn it over to Janae, I just want to brag on Janae just a little bit. She wears many hats, more so than just running this huge company. She's a mother of 7. She serves as the board chair of the United Way here in Utah County, and has also founded a nonprofit organization called Humans Driving Change. So she's very passionate about what she does and love in working with her. And so I'll turn the time over to you, Janae. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. I care passionately about this, and I'm so grateful for everything I've heard today and all the things that are being done to support all of the building owner, the business owners, and all of the employees that work every day to support their families. I think that I was going to let Amanda know I've done my part in already ordering popcorn online last night. I was really excited about that, I have to say. And I really do anything to support people trying to run business and support other businesses. So I'm glad to be here. So thank you. When my husband and I were very first married, I now call it had the blessing of losing a business. And it taught us a lot of really good lessons when we were only about 21 years old about what it meant to start a business and build a business and then fail, have things go wrong. And so I've been really looking at this whole situation with open eyes and seeing, like Rona said a long time ago, the impact that I saw coming for business owners. And my thoughts that I want to share today really are geared towards those business owners and my friends that I know that are trying to figure out the best way to go through this hard time. I think that the first thing that I have thought about really is our ability to change and picking an attitude. I have a sign in my house that says attitude is everything, pick a good one. And it doesn't mean it's easy. And believe me, when my husband and I go into work every day and on Zoom now, our comments to our work family is what we call them, and 2,500 people are thoughtful, and we really care about what we share with them. We want to lead, but be honest. And it's a hard balance to walk for a business owner right now, to find the answers, things that people want to hear about, and to figure out what that is. Like Rona said, right at the very first, we saw this coming. We took it seriously because of our industry. If it said 30 million square feet every night, it's actually up from that now. I need to update my website. It sounds like that, but that is every night. And so when we thought about all of the Fortune 500 companies that we clean in Utah and Nevada, we wanted to be prepared to serve our clients and also to protect our employees, our work family that would be going into hundreds of different facilities and making sure that they were safe, knowing that we're cleaning and disinfecting places that we knew had been infected with COVID-19 that carried those pathogens. One good example of that is Purple, and we've heard of that company. That's one building that we maintain. They've done a great job with trying to take steps to get back to work and to get their employees back going, but safely. And that hasn't happened yet. They're waiting for the go ahead, but they are ahead of the game and working through process and trying to figure out what things to do to make sure that their facilities are disinfected and clean and ready for those people returning, which will be happening. We don't know exactly the date, like we just heard, but we need to be ready. So we're working hard to do that. Another thing that we've had to think a lot about is being flexible and moving quickly. We've had Zoom calls every day with the whole team. And when I say that, we have a disaster cleanup company as well, and several other companies that kind of do the same kind of a thing. And I'm sorry about that. We've had to get the leaders from all the different companies to talk every single day because things are moving and changing, as we know, so quickly that we've had to just keep our conversations going and look at what's working, look at what's not working, and learning from each of those experiences that we have. Another thing that we've had to focus on really is not keeping old beliefs. One thing I love about Utah and my friends that own businesses is that we are innovative and we're willing to look at the things that we're facing and quickly shift and change and create ways to stay alive in business. And I respect that as I look at my colleagues, and that's the same kind of thing that we've had to do. We've had also to instill this kind of perspective with our employees, because we all of a sudden are trying to encourage 2,500 people to go into the same buildings that we're encouraging everybody else to not go into. And so to help them feel safe and train them as leaders that they can use, the protection that we've ordered. We have all the disinfectant, we have all the masks, the PPE, everything that we need to keep them safe and to train them has really been a big part of what we've taken time to do. Our team I guess together has decided we will do everything to make sure that they're safe and to not give up. You know, janitors, I would say, typically are not looked at like heroes in the community. They're kind of the ones that we don't see as much or hear from as much. And it's really been great to see just gratitude that people have for the, and janitors are only one of them. You know, there's medical people work in the grocery stores, all of the people that are serving that a lot of times aren't seen very much, are really being cheered on. And I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for people supporting our business, and I'm excited. I think we can pull through this if we all just support each other.
Janae, thank you so much for sharing your story. Especially thank you for what you're doing for your employees and also making it possible for other business owners to stay open for business. And thank you, Rona, for introducing us to Janae and bringing this story to our attention. Thanks to everyone who's joined today's town hall. A reminder, we'll join together again on Thursday at 4 p.m. Until then, you can go to coronavirus.utah.gov and find all the most up-to-date business information. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.